Creature Commandos just finished in its James Gunn's very first project as head of DC, and I gotta say, it was a very safe project. I don't feel like it took too many risks, but at the same time, it kind of gave us a little glimpse as to what could we expect moving forward. This is, of course, the first phase, or I think they were calling them chapters of Gods and Monsters. There was a whole breakdown when he became head of DC, kind of explaining how things were going to be categorized. But what this is an animated show on Max about a military group of superhumans comprised of a human leader, a werewolf, a vampire, Frankenstein's monster, and a gorgon who were put together for secret missions. I think my favorite thing of the show was the cast. We've got Indira Verma as the bride, Sean Gunn as G.I. Robot, and Weasel. Alan Tudyk, one of the greatest voice actors of our time now. He's sneaky great. You forget in how many great projects he has been. Zoe Chow as Nina, David Harbour as Frankenstein was a lovely surprise, Frank Grillo as Rick Flag Sr., and Maria Bakalova as Princess Alana. Of course, Viola Davis makes an appearance as Waller. She's always great in anything she does in her life. But it was a fun cast. It had a hefty amount of recognizable names, and it was really set up for fun. I will say there's this main story revolving around this princess. First they have to defend her, and then shenanigans happen, and then they have to go kill her. That's like the main story beat. And I wasn't particularly a fan of that. The main meat and potatoes of the show is each character's backstory within each episode. Each character has an episode basically. There's flashbacks of how they got there and giving us an insight to that character. That part of the storytelling I did find interesting because these are very cool characters. You got this water creature lady and then basically DC's Ghost Rider there. But the main story just didn't really do much for me. They try to up the stakes about like its world ending disaster thing, but it just didn't feel like that, especially with the pace, because then you're cutting it up and then showing us the backstory of these characters like I mentioned. I would have much rather there been a couple missions throughout the whole season. They start off with lower things instead of like, okay, come here you guys, you need to save the world. I would have much rather seen a couple, maybe 2 or 3 different missions of kill this guy, protect this guy, say extract this, which would allowed for even more team bonding. The chemistry between the characters is good, and it starts to develop even more and more as the season goes along. But the main thing is like they're all monsters, they're all outcasts, and you get to see their points of view with the backstories, which is the best part of the show in my opinion. Which sounds very, very familiar to James Gunn's bread and butter. Taking obscure characters and putting them in a team together to do pretty good storytelling. I mean, he did it with Guardians of the Galaxy, and he kind of did it with Suicide Squad. And the first thing you're going to do is compare this thing to Suicide Squad. And yes, there's so many similarities to the damn controller that they have to blow their heads off or whatever and kind of control them. All that is basically in this show as well. But the banter between these characters is more friendly, I feel like, than in the Suicide Squad, but not as friendly as Guardians. And this is what made me feel like this was like a very safe first project of his. It's his bread and butter groups, outcasts, which is fine. I don't mind it at all or anything. It's just a note, it's very safe. It didn't take a whole lot of risks, but for what it is, it's a very entertaining and fun show. Visually, I feel like it did enough to separate itself from everything out there. There are so many R-rated shows nowadays, but some of them, especially some of the superhero ones, are kind of looking very similar, especially when from DC. And this one did a little bit more to differ itself from the rest. It doesn't look like Harley Quinn. It doesn't look like the boys' little show, the Diabolical or whatever. It doesn't really look like that either. To me, this looked like what modern comics looks like, and it's just put on screen. So I enjoyed the animation. They also weren't afraid to show a little bit of titties. There's a couple sex scenes in there, and you get to see like side nipple. I don't know, just something I noticed. Extra points for that. That's cool. Who doesn't like side nipple? And the music I enjoyed as well. The way that they paired some of the music, and it's a little bit more out there. It's different enough that when you start to hear the music, you recognize it and it jolts you. Sometimes music is just in the background and you're just like whatever. But there are a lot of like fighting segments, and they bring in different kind of music that goes with that vibe. Sometimes it's like creepy and scary music, and that goes with what the hell we're watching. The music, kind of like the show, did enough to feel unique. Of course, this is a superhero show, so the most important thing about it is the fights, and the fights are fun. It has fun levels of gore. It doesn't go over the top like, you know, the boys would, but it has like creative kills. Like Phosphorus towards one of the last episodes does a very cool kill where like he simply puts his hand over this guy's mouth and just deletes his face, which is very subtle but very cool. They each have their different levels of gore. The bride is very handy with guns. They each play their role both in the violence and in the show. And it probably might have popped up on your feed, but there is a handful of fun cameos there. There's one that's really out of left field that I was not expecting, but then there was another one paired with that one, kinda, that does make sense. At the end of the day, I did ultimately like this show. Like, again, it's very middle of the road, but at the same time, it tries to be different, and I commend it for that. I wasn't bored. Each episode is less than 30 minutes, and it's his very first project, and I give him an A, right? But the most important thing is, what does this mean moving forward? What place does this show hold in the DCEU? Is it canon? And it does seem like he did pick and choose things from the past universe to kind of implement here. He also mentioned that if there were to be any appearances in the live action version, that he will be using the same voice actors to reprise their role, which that's very cool, which is also kind of interesting because there was a cameo at the last episode of a character that we've seen before in a James Gunn project, and he had a different voice. So it's kind of interesting to see if he's going to play the voice, or is he going to play that role, or is the original person who we first saw playing that role. But I would like to see maybe this show to establish itself a little bit more. Give me probably 2 more seasons and then come in with the live action whatever, or an appearance of a character here and there. I really wouldn't mind if Creature Commandos was its own thing. It doesn't have to necessarily come together with the rest of the DCEU. It's a fun little show here and there that could just live here, but it also works perfectly if they do decide to mesh them together. I feel like I would like to see more scenarios of them together in different missions. Like I said, this mission was very basic. It didn't really ask for a whole lot from them, really. There is tremendous consequence at the end, which lead to more emotional representation between the team. But I would like a couple more missions to form some more team bonding, putting them in more life or death scenarios to kind of make them grow closer to each other before we even get to see them in any sort of live action project. That way we can form an attachment with these characters when we do see them in a live action, because then they will bring in 2 more seasons, 3 seasons of emotional baggage of the animated show. That's the way I would see it. But Creature Commandos, as it is an A. He knocked it out of the park. It's a very fun show. It's a very cool show. It's a very easily digestible show. But he did his bread and butter. Like I said, he took the obscure characters and gave them a voice, if you will. And he's very good at doing that. So far, he's doing a good job. Superman is going to determine a lot of what the hell's going on with the DCE future. But we'll get to that when we get to that later this year. But I want to hear from you. Did you watch Creature Commandos? Did you even know this thing was coming out? Do you care? Do you not care? Do you like James Gunn? Do you hate James Gunn? Any and all Creature Commandos thoughts, feel free to let me know down in the comments. And when you're down there, if you can like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, that'd be great. Thank you guys for watching. Remember to always and forever, you do you.